I'm here with Mark Lindquist today. He's going to talk to us about some of the work he's doing up at the Central Lakes College with the CLC Audio Club. Before we get into that, of course, Mark, you're no stranger to Homegrown with Gil Junko and the Little Black Books. How many Homegrowns do you think you've played?
I probably lost count. I know I missed a couple. I know I was at the first few.
Yeah.
Probably at least a decade's worth. Probably going on maybe, I think, what would have this year been? The 22nd or something, 21st?
Yeah, I think the 21st is the one that...
Probably coming up on 2 decades of playing in that festival. It's my favorite festival to play. Some years it's the only festival that I play. For whatever reason, even going back to the first year, it's one of those things where if you're in a band, sometimes there's a certain venue or a certain place or a certain band you play with that it just always goes good. And Homegrown's one of those events for me. It's just always gone, even the years with maybe a couple of technical difficulties, just a good crowd and playing with a lot of other good bands. Usually they schedule us on a pretty good night too, so that's been helpful. When you get older for the festival, sometimes they accommodate what night you play, so I'm thankful for that.
Nice. That's good to hear. I was looking online too, and I saw that the Shaky Ray Angel Fire website is still up. Did you know that was still up? 2002.
Yeah, I had someone, boy, that was a long time ago, when I lived in Duluth and had a little studio on the Central Hillside, East Hillside. Someone built that web page right when people started building web pages.
Yep.
I don't know how to take those down. I don't get a lot from the websites. A lot of the work I do is in basements still to this day. Any following I can get online is kind of fun, but I don't know. I'm 50 years old, so websites, Facebook, Twitter, I like to page through them, but I don't do a lot of stuff on there.
Right. And for those who don't know, I mean, Shaky Ray was a DIY label and recording studio that you had been doing around here for a long time. You put out stuff from your own bands along with both Black Eyed Snakes, Father Hennepin, Crew Jones, The Keepaways, probably a million other local bands.
Yeah, I think we had close to 100 releases, and I was sort of proud. It was kind of a DIY, like you said, do it yourself. Part of that was because of my economics. I never really knew how to make any money, and we broke even on a lot of those projects because we didn't spend a lot. We stayed within our budget. I had a little basement, or I had a little studio in my basement, and I think a lot of bands in Duluth at that time, there wasn't a lot of home recording. It was expensive to go to a bigger studio. So I was pretty affordable. I was pretty open to people just kind of coming down in my basement and hanging out. I think you were in that group maybe even before I moved to Duluth. And you could make a decent demo tape on a 4 or 8 track recording system. I was kind of learning how to do it at the time. And people back then, you'd put out either a 45, a 7-inch record or a tape cassette, then eventually CDs as we moved into the digital age. I worked shortly with a friend of mine named Alan Cragen, which everyone should know up in Duluth. He's a great musician, good person, and a very good producer. And he had one of the very first Pro Tools computer programs. That's a computer program, for those that don't know. It's kind of the industry standard for recording. And he had one of the very first ones in Duluth. And I was lucky enough, he kind of put that in my basement. It took me a while to come around to the DAW world, digital audio workspaces, but I'm fully ingrained in it now. And I like to kind of rotate between the old analog recordings and the digital work. But what I was going to say is in my basement, having that Pro Tools there, a lot of bands came, and I think that was also their first experience with that sort of computerized home recording that you could afford to do. I think we charged $10 an hour to record my basement. And half those bands you mentioned either paid me in beer, or I know the band both paid me in fried chicken. Nice. And I was so broke at the time, I was happy to have both. My freezer was filled with fried chicken. About $200, I think, that they probably stole or took out of a place that they worked at and just passed it on to me because they owed me maybe $100 or something. And I still have fond memories of all those sessions.
Nice. Yeah, I remember going there, you know, when Alan was there. I remember going there before that, and I remember in Cloquet too. You know, like I said, I think I'd mentioned in an email, that was the first time I'd ever recorded
Just
anything.
wait right there.
As a kid.
Just hold on right there. I'm going to show you something, Corey.
All right, let's see what we got.
I have it right here. I don't know if you remember this.
Oh, yeah.
This still works. And you recorded on this, I'm pretty sure. Oh, God, that was maybe
I guarantee it.
At least 20 years ago. But you'd put a tape cassette in here, a blank tape cassette. And then you'd hit the red button, and you'd cross your fingers that the drums weren't too loud. That was my method back then. And I've kind of hung on to some of that gear. It's kind of fun.
That's awesome. And I think a lot of, you know, the younger artists, I'm going to sound like we're going to date ourselves quite a bit here, but they don't understand, you know, how much work you had to put into not just getting a band together in general without the internet, but recording wasn't just something you could wake up and be like, oh, let's record on a computer today. You know, now everybody has microphones and laptops and these programs. They can pirate off the dark web or whatever the kids are into, but it was so much different because you had to find somebody like you who had the 4-track or the 8-track and knew what they were doing with it, you know, or hope they knew what they were doing with it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I was lucky in a way, as I ran in many years ago when I was in college down in the Twin Cities in the late 1980s. I ran to a guy named Rich Mattson. And he still records today at a place called Sparta Sound. He taught me a lot. Just watching him, he doesn't talk a lot, but I would watch him record. My band would record demo tapes there. And when I had a basement of my own, I kind of said, I want to be like that guy. I didn't really see a financial future in it, or I'm sure we'll segue to a teaching future in it. I just needed a place where I could record my own music. And then that kind of fell into where my friends were. But you're right. It was hard to come by equipment. You had to sort of rig stuff together. These days it's easy. A student may email me and just say, I don't want to use that guitar solo. And with a touch of a button, I can just pull it out of their mix that's on my laptop or my work computer. Back then, you'd have to spend a Saturday afternoon doing something like that. But in some ways, it forced you to be maybe more creative, maybe forced you to be a more conscientious player as far as your own playing ability went. The choices you make there, you either had to live with your mistakes or use them to your advantage or just play better. I know how you set up a room is completely different these days. I was even reading the other day that I think the band Fugazi used to send their singer halfway up the stairs because that's where they got the best vocal mix when they would record their rehearsals. And I remember moving people around my basement that same way of like, let's put the bass player like underneath the stairs for this because he's way too loud and he's bothering me, you know. These days you just plug it into the computer and there's, you know, different options you can do there creatively, but it's different than when we used to do it back in basements with real microphones and gear that we would either borrow or take from places and use for the weekend.
Yeah, getting the gear or even any of the gear was a lot harder too. And now you can just go on any website and it'll show up to your house in 2 days. But if you...
Or you can download it.
Yeah,
the recording program that's on my laptop that I'm speaking into right now, I got through the CARES Act. Because I've had to teach I'm recording and music lessons from home, and I needed to put recording software on my laptop. And back then, you know, it wasn't that easy. I gave him a credit card number, I hit a button, and about 2 hours later, I had the latest version of Pro Tools installed in my laptop.
Yeah, you'd have had to wait 6 weeks for a 4-track to show up in the mail from wherever you ordered it from, and yeah, it's crazy. But, you know, good for technology and everybody. So why don't you tell us about some of the work that you're doing up at the CLC Audio Club, how you got it into that position up there, and then you also have been working on a 15-song compilation. Of
It's
course,
now
we're
up
going
to
to talk
18
about that
songs.
too. What's that?
It's now up to 18 songs.
All right.
We moved here about 10 years ago, and my wife teaches there at the college. I was still working from home at that time, kind of more of a stay-at-home dad, part-time musician and sports writer. Then I started teaching there guitar lessons, and that led to me also coaching some basketball at Central Lakes College. And then I started teaching some audio production there. And I run a thing called the CLC Audio Club. It's a group of students, faculty, and staff that get together. We record our own music. We put out our own records. We kind of take it year to year. Each year we try to do an album in a different format. And they're all original songs. You know, I can't pay to get the copyrights for songs and mass produce. And there's a lot of rules when you work for the state of Minnesota. But the students write their songs. They do everything from the artwork of the album cover to actually folding the album covers and putting those together. We can't press our own vinyl. That's about the only thing we can't do. The first year, and I have it here, we did a CD, and it was 10 songs called Silver Tracks. We don't really sell these. We put some in the bookstore. It's more of just a project to do. You know, the students, we get together on Fridays in the fall and record. And then after Christmas, you know, we have to get it mastered, put the artwork together, raise some money through Student Senate to, you know, maybe make 100 or 200 copies. That was our first year's project. Then our second year's project, which I don't think I'll ever do again because it almost killed me, but we put out a vinyl record, and it is a beautiful cover. But this is the cover. People in the graphic arts program actually printed these out, folded. I watched them do it. It was insane. Folded these little creases and glued them together.
Oh, wow.
Like 200 of these, and then did the vinyl record. And then this was also the year I kind of started working with, you know, I have resources of people that I know up in the Duluth area and in Minneapolis to a certain extent, and using their services. Jim Hagstrom, who's a good friend of mine, he mastered this particular album. Mindy Johnson, who's a musician from Duluth, now lives in Minneapolis. She designed some of the artwork, that little David Bowie loon right there, she designed. So it's kind of like what I used to do in Duluth, but now I'm exploiting students and college professors to do my bidding. And this year, because of COVID, I didn't have access to a ton of students. A lot of my students are online, and we didn't have access. We have a big recording studio at Central Lakes College. I didn't have access to the studio because of some COVID social distancing restrictions. So we did remote recordings, and I had 6 students record songs. Some of them worked together, some of them completely separate. I needed more than 6 songs for my album. So I reached out to some friends in Duluth, and I was surprised. I priced out 20 emails, and boy, close to 15 people emailed me back and sent me home recordings. That was kind of the theme, was home recordings during COVID. Some of the recordings were done in bigger studios, but they were more personal recordings, and bands a lot of people have heard of, like Trampled by Turtles and Low. They're both on the record. Wow. Mary View, and then people that maybe from the Duluth area would very much recognize, like Mark Gartman or Jerry Small. They're on there. And then there's some people that I've kind of met over the course of the last few years at Homegrown, like Darren Sipity, who's a hip hop Native American artist. He's on this record with just amazing kind of home recording he does. And that's it. There's a total of 18 tracks. They'll be on Bandcamp, where the rest of our albums are. If you look up CLC Audio Club, any money we make from there, free to download. But if you donate money, the money goes to students in crisis during COVID. A lot of our students and student athletes come from low income, high risk situations. So if we make some money, it goes into a fund that they can access through, it's called the CLC Foundation, and they keep track of all the money. I turn it over to them. I don't know what to do with it once it comes to me.
That's awesome. That's really great. It's got to be, when you are recording with these kids or these younger adults, I mean, it's got to be really great to kind of, when they step in to see how all this works for the first time, when they're doing their first recordings, I can imagine that's got to be really rewarding.
It is. It's interesting that you say it. These are first-time songwriters. So they still think music is magic in a way. They see American Idol and they think that's what it is. And when they see that they can do it themselves, that is rewarding.
Nice.
They are, and they're a fun group to work with. I'm always happy. They're a lot easier sometimes to work with than what you would call a working musician, because they hear a little bit of echo on their vocals. They think it's great. They think I'm doing a great job. I do that with some of my friends. They're like, hey, stop with the reverb effect on my vocals. And we have a pretty nice setup at CLC. And so it's fun to get them in there and put that stuff to use.
That's great. You know, I love that you're still keeping the DIY spirit alive, you know, through these projects. And so this new one that you have coming out, that's supposed to be on Bandcamp in January, or is that already? Yeah,
in January. It's called Secret Garden. It's actually one of the songs that one of our students, David Mumblow, did. And there's the artwork. Our student and the graphic arts department kind of put the artwork. But yeah, it'll be on Bandcamp. It'll be 18 songs. You can download individual tracks or the whole darn thing. It's free, but there's also a button there you can click, pay what you want. That money goes straight to COVID relief for students. And awesome. I'm hoping at some point when all this is said and done to bring the two worlds together, bring some of my students either through the club or through a class I teach up to Homegrown Music Festival and maybe make part of my class Homegrown Music Festival. I think that would be pretty amazing for them to know. It also encourages them to do original music. A problem that I have down here, and I think in smaller communities, there's few places there is a live music venue. They expect cover bands, cover songs. Mm-hmm. And that's been a big thorn in my side for years. I think musicians should write their own songs for the most part. And then they usually do a great job at doing it, and they don't get to share them with people. So I'm also trying to get my students, encourage them, hey, the first couple songs you write might not be great, but keep at it. You're as good of a writer as a human being as the next person. And it's a lot of times a matter of just sticking with it. Corey, you probably know that. You and I probably both cringe at our first albums that we made when we were 19 years old. You were even younger than that. You were probably 15. But you get better as you get older. And it's more rewarding to have your own body of work. And yeah. I know that's I really appreciate Homegrown Music Festival. Never, in fact, they encourage people. It was a prerequisite to play your own work at the festival. So I appreciate clubs that honor that, and then also the Homegrown that does that. Yeah, and you know, Duluth Superior has had a good mix of those kind of venues for a long time, but I think a lot of people forget too, if you start going back 20, 25 years, it wasn't exactly like that. It was a lot more cover band bars and stuff too. So there was a struggle that I think went on before it kind of got to this point where it was more evened out. Well, that struggle still goes on, especially around here. I know the resorts around here, I think you even have to sign a contract and make agreements that you will not play your own music at some of these places. Oh, wow. And so I'm kind of still fighting that war 30 years later, and I don't mind fighting it. Good. Somebody's got to do it. Well, yeah, do you have the greater good? Yes. Yes. So do you have any plans for the next project after this one, or are you just going to kind of wait to see how things go over the... Well, I would like to put this out. These albums kind of, by the time they come out, it wears and tears on the faculty advisor of the CLC Audio Club. I'm not going to say I lose sleep over it, but it's a lot of work, staring at a computer, making sure everyone is on the same page. And, you know, you're kind of dealing with some people's feelings as well. These songs are close and personal to them. And I want to make sure we put them out correctly. So by the time they're done, I take a long break. I say, I'm never going to do this again. Someone else can run the club next year. And then it ends up being me. I don't know what we're going to do next year. I think, you know, it'll be fun to get back to playing live. I think all of us musicians, even someone like me that I don't play shows like I used to. And I certainly, the last little mini tour I was on was maybe 6 gigs long at the most. That was 2 or 3 years ago. I'm kind of ready to start playing live again. And I know my friends in bands are ready to play live. And I miss going up to Duluth. That was always a sure bet for me. I love going up there and playing. What I consider my band, Bob and Jim, are still up there. And I look forward to working with them. And as far as the club here at CLC. I don't know what we're going to do next year. Like I said, I think I may try to bring those two worlds together, do tours of the studios that I know up in Duluth with my class, and that's it.
Nice.
Also, I should say our basketball season was canceled, so I have some time on my hands right now, and it's nice to be a musician because you can always sit, in your music spot and play music. I can't just pace around here and blow my whistle if I'm jonesing to coach basketball.
That's right. So, do you still find a lot of time to work on your own music or writing songs, or does that kind of take a back seat to these other projects when you have those going on?
It's not like it's a good question. It's not like it used to be. I used to always have something written down. I always was working on 2 or 3 things. Now I concentrate a little bit more on maybe writing 2 to 4 good songs instead of 25 mediocre songs that I probably had a habit of doing back then. I usually do something with them, whether it's putting out a 7-inch single or making a short music video. So yeah, I'm kind of building a body of work again that I can hopefully present to Bob and Jim when we can get together and record again. One project our club does is called Exquisite Corpse, and it goes back to a French art movement where a person would just, on a large piece of paper, draw a head, a person's head or a monster's head, and then fold the paper over where you couldn't see it. You'd maybe see a little bit of the neck, and give it to the next artist, and the next artist, not knowing what the first artist drew, would draw a body. Fold it over, give it to the next artist. The next artist, and when they unfold it, quite often it was pretty silly, but a lot of times it was also really cool, something you'd never come up with within your own imagination. I did that musically with my club this year. It's called Exquisite Corpse, where I just gave a drum beat to someone on a digital download. They added a guitar, sent it back to me, then I sent it to another player. Nobody heard the song after they sent it back to me. And there's about 6 musicians on there. So it'll be interesting. And the song came out, I couldn't have imagined the experiment coming out better. It sounds like a real song off of like a 007 movie soundtrack.
Nice.
I could never repeat this, but it came out so perfect. I'm excited for these people. They have not heard the song. The reason I bring that up is I was kind of thinking it came out so well, I might try that with Jim and Bob. Kind of being non-social musicians, I might just send them digital tracks and say, add what you want and send it back to me. And that'll be the record for next time.
Nice. Well, yeah, I look forward to seeing you guys play again up here when things get back to normal or whatever normal is going to be. But unless you have anything else you wanted to add about your projects,
no, just
going on.
Sometime in January, if you want to hear what I'm up to, or you want to hear the new Low track, or just check it out, and it's for a good cause. CLC Audio Club on Bandcamp. There's already a couple things up there of student recordings and the CLC choir. Any downloads, like I said too many times already, go to a fund to help students in crisis during COVID. And I hope, all right, what's the word on Homegrown? Are we having one? Is it to be determined? Virtual style? Just interviews with me?
I guess you'll have to see the public announcements as they come up. That's all I can really say right now. So it's hard. It's hard for everybody to try to figure out how to go about everything. So yeah, I don't really have I have some guesses. I don't know if they're good, but we'll see what happens.
Well, I have all the faith in the world that the right decisions will be made. The festival always has. So I look forward to the day that we can get back together and I can take people's money at the kickball game.
Excellent. All right. Mark Lindquist, everybody, thank you very much for your time and for chatting with me about all your awesome projects. And
thank you, Corey. It was nice to talk to somebody from Duluth.
Yeah, yes. Have a good holiday, Thanksgiving, all that stuff. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.